which when we with each year of his marriage. We had often
Often walk.
we would often walk over to the village. There he met with a small group of the townsfolk. They sat on a bench in front of the inn as were telling endless stories about nothing. They were a kind of club. They smoked pipes all day and nodded their heads voices. Their leader was Nicholas Vedder, the owner of the inn. He sat in a large chair at the head of the bench. But even there, Rick was not safe.
Not safe.
Not safe. Then, when Nicole often appeared at the door, she would scream at them all and call them lazy good for nothings. And grabbing Rick by the arm, she would drag him home. Rick's only escape was to go for long walks in the woods. There he was safe. He would sit at the foot of a tree and share his food with Wolf. Poor Wolf, he would say, your mistress makes you lead a dog's life. But as long as I live, you shall always have a friend. The dog would wag his tail and would repeat and love its master's friend.
Thank you so much, Arjun. That was excellent.
Nice.
Chihiro?
One fine autumn day, Pip took a long walk to one of the highest parts of the Catskill Mountain. By late in the afternoon, he was tired. He dropped to the ground to rest. From an opening between the trees, he looked over the cliffs to the rich woodland
Woodlands below them.
below him. He saw the great Hudson River flowing on its
Splendid.
splendid silence. He saw white sails against the purple sky. He watched a leaf fall from a nearby tree. Suddenly, Leaf realized it would be evening before he got home. He jumped to his feet and began to climb down the mountain. Just then, he heard a voice from the distance. Rip Van Winkle, it called. Rip looked around. He could see nothing but a lonely cloud flying above him.
Lonely crow flying above him.
It must be my imagination, he thought. He began to go on his way when he heard the cry ring out again, Rip Van Winkle. At the same time, Luke jumped up and gave a loud blow. Rip began to feel a bit afraid. Rip turned and saw a strange figure slowly making his way up the road. The stranger was bending under the weight of something he carried on his back. Rip was surprised to find anybody in this lonely place. It must be one of my neighbors, Rip thought, and he hurried to help him. When Rip got close, he was shocked at how the stranger looked. He was short and square. He had thick, bushy hair and a heavy beard. He was dressed in the Dutch fashion of years gone by. He was even wearing breeches.
He was even wearing breeches.
And on his shoulder, he was carrying a barrel that seemed full of liquor.
There we go, Chihiro. Thank you. All right, I'm going to read for a little bit. The man made a sign for Rip to assist him. Rip was by nature helpful, so he went up to the man and took the keg from his shoulder. Each of them carried it for a while as they slowly made their way up the mountain path. Every now and then, Rip heard long, rolling echoes like distant thunder. The sounds were coming from between two large rocks to which they were heading. Rip thought it must be one of those passing thunder showers which often take place high in the mountains. He wondered why the stranger was carrying a keg of liquor up this wild mountain, but he said nothing. They passed between the two large rocks and entered a small, round area which nature had carved out of the mountain. There, another strange sight greeted Rip's eyes. In the center of the open area, he saw some odd-looking fellows. They were bowling. The men were dressed in funny old-fashioned clothing. They wore doublets, jerkins, and breeches. Some had long knives in their belts. Their faces were funny, too. One had a large head, flat face, and small piggish eyes. Another had a nose so large that it nearly covered his face. They all had beards of different shapes and colors. One heavy gentleman seemed to be the chief. He was dressed all in red and wore a white hat with a long feather. The whole group reminded Rip of figures he had seen in old Dutch painting. Maria?
The stranger men seemed to be enjoying themselves. Yet they looked serious as could be and never said word. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of the board striking the panes. The sound echoed along the mountains like the rolling of thunder. When Rip and the men approached them, the men stopped below. Bone. They stared at Rip
so hard
that his knees began to shake. Then his companion emptied the liquor into large mugs. The men gulped down their drinking in silence.
Very good, Maria. Thank you.
Giti. Giti hasn't been. Giti.
Oh, Giti?
After a while, Rip was less afraid. When no one was looking, he even tasted the beverage. One taste soon led to another. He drank so much, he grew dizzy. His eyes swam in his head, and his head slumped over. He soon fell into a deep sleep. When Rip awoke, he found himself on the spot where he had first seen the man with the butter. He rubbed his eyes. It was a bright, sunny morning. The birds were hopping and twittering among the bushes. An eagle was soaring above. Suddenly, thought Rip, I have not slept here all night. Then he remembered all that had happened before he fell asleep. He recalled a strange man with the keg of liquor. The figures calling in the mountains and the many
jugs of liquor he had drunk. Oh, thought Rip miserably, what excuse can I possibly give to Dame Van Winkle?
Dame Van Winkle. Very good. Easy. Thank you. So everyone knows what's happening, right?
Yes.
Everyone's getting drunk and bowling in the mountains. This is a very popular sport.
He looked around for his gun, but in place of his green, well-oiled big
Rifle.
he found one covered with blood. We thought the man of the mountain had played a trick on him. They have filled me with liquor and robbed me of my gun, he said. All two had disappeared. For no matter how many times Rip whistled, the dog was not to be seen. Rip decided to go back to the place where he had spent the night. If I meet any of those men, he said to himself, I will demand my dog and gun. He rose to his feet with difficulty.
He rose to his feet with difficulty.
Yeah. He was so stiff he could hardly move. Sleeping on this hard mountain ground does not agree with me, sadly. After a while, we found the path he had traveled with the stranger. He began to follow it. When he got to the rock, he found, much to his surprise, a mountain stream flowing over them. There was no way to go within the rock. No trace of the opening remained. There was just one high wall over which the water came tumbling.
Thank you, Ian. Very good. Here then, poor Rip was brought to a halt. He stood puzzled again and again. He called for his dog. The only answer was the cawing of some crows. What was to be done? The morning was passing quickly away, and Rip was starved for breakfast. He hated to give up his dog and his gun. He didn't look forward to going home to his wife. But there was no point to dying of hunger in the mountains. So Rip shook his head. He threw the rusty gun over his shoulder and headed sadly home. As Rip got near the village, he saw many people, but there wasn't anyone he knew. This surprised Rip, for he thought he knew everyone who lived there. Their dress was strange too, not at all like his. The village people stared at Rip with equal surprise.
Hypnotics.
Sleep.
Hypnotics.
Oh no.
Here.
Rip noticed that as they looked at him, they began to stroke their chins without thinking about it. Rip did the same thing. To his great surprise, he discovered his beard had grown a foot long. By now, Rip had entered the village. A group of strange children ran at his heels. They shouted and made fun of him, pointing at his long beard. Dogs, too, barked at him as he passed. The village itself seemed different. It was larger and more crowded. There were rows of houses he had never seen before, and those he remembered had disappeared. Strange names were over the doors. Strange faces were at the windows. Everything was strange. Rip's head spun. He began to wonder whether he and the world around him had been bewitched. Surely this was his own native village. He had left it just the day before. There were the hills and valleys of the Catskill Mountains. There in the distance ran the Silver Hudson River. That pitcher of liquor, Rip thought, has mixed up my brains. Mr. Cook?
Yes. With some difficulty, he made his way to his own house. He approached it with fear. Every moment he expected to hear the shrill voice of Dame
Van Winkle.
Dame Van Winkle. He found the house badly decayed. The roof had fallen in. The windows were shattered. The doors were off their hinges. A half stopped dog that looked like a wolf was sulking about. Rip called him by name, but the dog snarled and showed
Its teeth.
its teeth. Then it walked away.
Sulking is, a sad condition.
So,
The dog has been through a lot. It's sad.
yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Kim.
My own dog sighed for Rip, has forgotten me. He entered the house. It was empty and silent. He called loudly for his wife and children, but the old house only echoed his own voice and fell again into the silence. Rip rushed off to his old meeting place, the village inn, but it too was gone. In its place stood a large wooden building. Over the door was a sign, the Union Hotel. The large tree in front of the inn had been replaced by a tall pole, and on the top of the pole, a flag with the stars and stripes was floating.
Fluttering.
Fluttering.
Fluttering is a flag dancing in the wind, right?
Yes. In the breeze, everything was strange and mysterious. The only familiar object was a painting on the door. It was the cheerful face of King George. Under this very picture, Rip had smoked his pipe and talked with his friends. But something had changed in the painting too. King George's red coat was now blue and yellow. He wore a cocked hat on his head instead of a crown, and on the leaves, painted in very large letters, were the word General Washington.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kim. That was very good. Tetsuya?
As usual, there was a large crowd of people at the inn. Rip looked for Nicholas Bader or Barney, but they were nowhere to be seen. In their place were unknown fellows rushing around. They were arguing about the rights of citizens, elections, liberty, Bunker Hill, Congress. To the bewildered Rip, the word meant nothing at all. A crowd had gathered around Rip. They stared at his long beard, rusty gun, and strange clothes.